Are there any other LSAT members who have not yet announced themselves? Okay, Ramona, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you so much, Catherine. So good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for your flexibility. I know we had quite a bit of a time getting on, so we're going to jump right into our agenda for today. We're going to begin with updates from Principal Berkowitz. As many of you have contacted myself alone over the last couple of days, and we had a walkthrough that occurred a little bit over an hour ago. And so I just want to give him an opportunity to respond to some of the many concerns that you guys have expressed and we've shared with him prior to the start of the meeting. So Principal Berkowitz, I'm going to turn it over to you for a reopening update.
All right, thank you, Ramona, and thanks everybody for joining tonight. I want to thank the folks that did also join virtually to our walkthrough. I think we were somewhere around 30 people at some point, in addition to the ones inside. So the walkthrough concluded with everyone down the lobby. We went through the checklist that the WTU and the DCPS leadership agreed on. That is the reopening readiness checklist. Maybe somebody could find that online and drop that in. I didn't do that. But there were concerns raised, but they were not concerns related to the checklist. So everyone had a chance to identify items on the checklist that were not addressed, and there was no comment there. So I can infer that all of the items were addressed to the satisfaction of the people that participated in person and even virtually. We had plenty of staff attending and participating virtually, which was fantastic. I thought our walkthrough was successful in November, and I think our walkthrough today was equally successful. And I plan on being open to students on Thursday. There were some concerns. If you were in the meeting, you heard them about the cooling system on the third floor. We talked about that. The solution is that the problem is only the third floor. It does not, those concerns are not related to the checklist, but we're going to close the third floor until those concerns are addressed and move the 2 classrooms we had planned there to the 4th floor. Simple solution. One other concern was a couple classrooms wanted some extra hand sanitizer. We'll have those there first thing on Monday. So first thing tomorrow. So there aren't any concerns from my point of view that rise to the level of meeting the criteria to open per the WTU DCPS checklist. And I see no reason, I've heard no reason from our central office support team to think that we wouldn't be ready. And our position was that we were ready on Monday. So we are planning to open on Thursday, like I mentioned in my last community email. Yeah, Ms. Houghton has a question in there about what happens now. Does someone approve it? I think the people there approved it. I asked when I was meeting with the DCPS leadership yesterday, I was like, are the decision makers in the room today on our walkthrough? And the answer I got was with our chiefs and Superintendent Stover. IS Stover is actually with us tonight. Thank you, Mr. Stover, for joining. That the folks in the room would have the agency to decide if that was met and would we be moving forward. So if you were there, you hopefully remember that there weren't objections relative to this checklist, and that we should feel safe, that we've met the criteria that the WTU and DCPS have agreed upon, and that we are excited and ready to safely welcome kids and staff. So I think that's my summary of the walkthrough. Maybe some staff that were there or parents that were there would like to go further. I can explain the third floor issue a little bit. The third floor has a cooling issue. We're aware of it. The thermostats aren't working appropriately. What is working on the third floor is there is heat, there is circulation, there are the HEPA and MERV filters that are all functioning properly. The temperature was comfortable when we were there tonight, and anytime this week and at times previously. But if it were June, we would be uncomfortable on the third floor, right? Because the cooling is not working as it's supposed to be. But all the other issues have been addressed in terms of filtration, circulation, and heating. I have a lot more actually I could share from our chief of ops. It's not exactly like public friendly, but we're going to be getting the details of the problem out to everybody as soon as we can. One of the follow-up steps was to, how do I do this? I'm trying to drop a file in here. One of the follow-up steps was to make sure everyone had access to the HVAC enhancements, which I just got in my email, so I'm going to work on uploading that. But maybe someone else wants to share from the participants about the walkthrough experience.
Hey, thank you, Principal Berkowitz. As the LSAT rep who's on the walkthrough, I'm happy to share a few impressions and takeaways. I think you summarized it well. Also, so everyone's aware, I was on the walkthrough that occurred back in November too. What I will say is that we were careful and intentional to make sure we went through every aspect of the checklist, and we were able to cover all of the different parts of it. Also, any questions that we had that wasn't specific to the checklist, Ms. Montgomery and Principal Berkowitz and others who were there were very helpful in answering those questions. So overall, my impression was it looked like the schools were ready to reopen per the checklist that had been agreed upon. And I also just want to note, thank you, Principal Berkowitz, for some of the suggestions that some members on the walkthrough had for things that could enhance the classrooms. Your willingness to work with your team to find solutions and make that happen, including offering some of the solutions based on the conversations we were having, both with people who were there in person and also individuals who were participating virtually. We appreciate that responsiveness.
I see a question in the chat about this fourth floor move. First, like the checklist was met. I'm confident that the third floor is safe and comfortable for learning to happen for everybody. But let's make it work on the fourth floor, and that's not a big deal. The impact is there'll be 4 classrooms on the fourth floor. Eventually, 5th grade is just having 1 start on Thursday. They'll have 2 after President's Day, but that puts 4 classes up on the 4th floor, which is the same as we have on the 2nd floor. So with the 2nd floor, we have our 2nd and 3rd graders. I explained this in the walkthrough actually. There's one big bathroom there, right, with multiple stalls and urinals and sinks and so forth. But with four classrooms, there's a 15-minute schedule. So teacher A is going to be able to send kids between in the first 15 minutes of the hour, teacher B in the second 15 minutes of the hour, and so on. We'll do the same thing with the 5th and 4th graders. We went over that schedule with our training in teachers early in this week on the 2nd floor, and we have the schedule. We can just modify it for the 4th and 5th graders. Of course, restroom emergencies can happen. We're going to train our kids to use the bathroom one at a time, in addition to washing hands and staying safe and following all of our Panther Pride behavioral expectations. And that's just one of them for COVID, right? It's always good practice to have one student in the bathroom at a time, but that's how we're going to move forward. How long before the problems were fixed? I don't know. We're going to work on that. We certainly will have cooling when we need cooling. That's for sure.
Thank you for that. And I typed that because a participant sent me a direct message. So let me just say to all participants on the call in our meeting tonight, if you're, you can feel free to post your questions to all particularly when our principal is speaking. Typically, for those of you who haven't joined LSAT, the LSAT, we walk through our agenda with those members speaking. But since we know a lot of you are here today to hear about those issues, Principal Berkowitz has been open to try to respond to and put it in for everyone, as well as still supporting a few more of our members who can't get on. So if you can bear with me, but I think he just responded to that, all of those in that question. I've sent them all. And yeah, these are to all. And I'll let you, Principal Berkowitz, they're asking how many students are confirmed as of today for each grade level. Do you want to go into that? I know, oh, there we go. Okay.
That sheet includes the pre-K4 folks, but pre-K4 families know that we had to move that entire grade level virtual. So that may be a surprise to some people, but not the pre-K4 families. Our fifth grade acceptances were higher. Fifth grade families should also be aware of this. We had to take a couple people who had accepted back because of one staff member actually cannot report until after President's Day, and in that case we will have 2 full cohorts of fifth graders. We're going to continue making calls and letting people know that they can join on what is that, January 16th or something, and so we'll have that ready to go. We're also going to continue to fill our seats until we get to that 22 number at the K5 level. Pre-K3 is capped at 16, 2 classes of 8.
Can you repeat the number for fifth grade? I'm sorry, I missed that. You said it is higher. What is that number for fifth grade?
So fifth grade's been bouncing a little bit, Pamela. We had someone drop today. That's why it's not 11. When we got the news, when was that? Thursday night, Friday, we shared with parents that we could only have 1 teacher serve right away. So when we were planning to open on Monday, it would have just been Miss Hightower and not Miss Bell. Miss Bell, however, should we expect her on the 16th? And so we had to cut the cohort down to 1. So we're going to start with Miss Hightower teaching ELA in the morning, and Miss Bell is going to teach math in the afternoon to the students who are in person, but she's going to do it virtually. So it's kind of like a care model for the first 2 weeks until Miss Bell is available to come back.
So she will eventually be in person?
She will, yes.
Before we move to the numbers, I wanted to ask about the walkthrough. I wasn't able to attend and I wanted to. Considering all of the chatter that was going on, what did the teachers union say about this walkthrough? Were they pleased about this one, considering that we did see more classrooms, it sounds like, and it sounds like everything went well this time, and we got to see everything this time. So could someone from the teachers union speak to the tour?
Ms. Houghton, come off mute. Thanks for.
I think you're on mute. Actually, you're not on mute, but we're not hearing you. Check your mic in your settings to see if it's.
Hi, it's Ms. Shepherd. I was not in attendance, and I do serve as the Watkins rep. So I was not there for the tour. I actually let Principal Berkowitz know I would not be able to make it. So I did inform the union that I wasn't going to be able to attend, and I was informed that in order for the walkthrough to count, all parties must be present. So it was confirmed today at around about an hour ago that the walkthrough today does not count as a walkthrough because there was not a WTU, the Watkins WTU representative there. If it's not myself or somebody from the union, and because of them not having evidence from the second walkthrough, that's why this one had to happen, and within enough time. But unfortunately, we did not get enough time in order to just make sure that we were all present.
And this is Ms. Sullivan. I just want to add to that according to the MOA, we also need to have a teacher member from LSAT and a SCAC member.
And this is Mr. Al Musa, and I'd also like to note, because I think there's probably a little bit of confusion about the walkthrough, because we're on the one hand saying that it was a successful walkthrough, and on the other hand saying it also resulted in two classes being moved to a different floor. So I just want to give a little bit of information about that, just to be clear about the problem that was raised and also how that problem's been handled thus far up to this point. The problem that was raised has to do with the HVAC system on the 3rd floor. The HVAC system has not been able to provide forced air, neither heating nor cooling, since last fall. So obviously when I came back in the building hearing about millions of dollars worth of HVAC enhancements, I was expecting that the HVAC on the 3rd floor would have obviously been fixed. However, I was very surprised to find that the HVAC was still not functioning. According to the engineer from whom I received this information via Miss Montgomery, the HEPA filter in the back of the classroom is still functioning, and something called the energy recovery unit is also still functioning. However, those two things are considered supplemental to the HVAC system itself. Those are supplements. Those do not qualify as a robust HVAC system that is required per DCPS guidelines as it relates to the reopening of schools. I'm going to also, for this situation, and I'm really sorry to have to do this, I wish I did not, as a teacher, have to think and learn about HVAC guidelines in order to sort of advocate for myself and, most importantly, advocate for my students, because ultimately they're the ones who are being brought into this space without being given full information regarding an HVAC system that's been broken for a year. However, having said that, I am going to read a couple of quotes that come from a report, and the report is a memo from the Department of General Services in combination with DCPS, and it's regarding school preparedness. And the relevant quotes that I would like to read include the following. And this is basically guidance for reopening schools. It says, energize HVAC systems 5 days before occupancy and maintain proper indoor air temperature and humidity in order to maintain and reduce potential for spread of airborne pathogens. So what that's saying is that our HVAC system, including temperature regulation controls, need to be in place in order to treat the air and reduce potential for the spread of airborne pathogens. So on the 3rd floor of Watkins, that isn't happening. We have a space heater. We do not have a centralized AC and heating system. It is broken. It has been broken for a year and it's still broken. So when we say the heat is fixed, we're talking about space heaters. And when we say the cooling doesn't work, we're saying that the whole system is broken, because the cooling and the heat actually are coming, I'm not entirely positive, but I believe from the same system. Now, and what's most concerning to me is that I, as a 4th grade teacher, had to spend my evening on a Monday looking up diagrams of HVAC equipment because I've been given misinformation regarding our HVAC system. And it is not within my job qualifications to have to do that. So when I came to our administration, and as a matter of fact, it was my colleague who originally raised the issue last week, because we noticed that our thermostats were displaying the exact same error code they were displaying a year ago when we left school. So my colleague raised the issue, and the issue was acknowledged. So thank you for that. The issue was then minimized and treated as solved. And I want to be really clear about that pattern. It was acknowledged, it was minimized, and it was treated as solved. And so from a personal standpoint, and from someone who is coming from a place of really caring about children and who enjoys my job and wants to keep doing it and wants the best for kids, it is very difficult for me, and I'll just speak from a personal standpoint. It's really hard for me to be able to know how many other issues have been raised, acknowledged, minimized, and treated as solved. Because that seems to be what happened in this situation. And I'm really, really, really sad to say it took me essentially, and excuse my language, raising hell during a walkthrough in order for a basic safety precaution to be taken that should have been already in place. And it wasn't taken until I had to speak up repeatedly. My words were repeatedly misconstrued during that meeting and misrepresented during that meeting. I continuously said it was a safety issue, and it was continuously up until this very point, until this very meeting, has been represented as a heating and cooling issue, when we know that our safety system is, first of all, air centric, given that we're going through an airborne virus, and second of all, relies on all the different components of that system working in conjunction with each other. And that is what I learned during our DCPS training. And it's also something I've had to learn on my own as I try to navigate safety complaints that, in my mind, and I think once again, I'll just speak personally, in my mind, have been minimized, not taken seriously, and then treated as solved. And to me, I don't know what other complaints have been out there that nobody chose to attend a walkthrough and raise hell about. So that's very concerning to me as a teacher, and I would feel remiss in my duties not coming to parents and letting them know about that. I would feel extremely like I wasn't doing my diligence as a teacher, and I'm so sorry to take up all that time, but I think it was something that had to be said. And I just want to reiterate that I'm really, really dejected that I had to learn so much about these technical aspects, when that is something that I wish I could trust would happen for me. And I'm going to stop right there, but I'm sorry to take up all that time, and I just really appreciate it. And I just am really here. I don't like attending these meetings. I never really do, but I would just feel completely remiss if I had not brought that up.
Well, Mr. Almusa, I feel like today was the first time you and I engaged directly about that concern. And I think that what we offered was, well, first of all, the short-term solution was, well, the issue's on the third floor, let's not go to the third floor. And I thought leaving that meeting with that as a solution worked. But I do think you're addressing something systemically and ongoing that probably predates me and Ms. Montgomery, the Director of Strategy and Logistics.
I appreciate that. I want to make it clear that's not what I'm doing. I'm actually just talking about this year. And I also want to make it clear that this was communicated about on Friday, and it was, in the meantime, right up until today, no solutions were offered, and I had to bring it up in this meeting. So it's not something.
But we did get a solution, right?
Yes, and my point is
Great.
that what it took to come up with a solution, basically I've had to put myself out there, and I'm currently in fear of retaliation in order to make these statements that I'm making and that I made during the walkthrough. And if that's what it takes to put basic safety precautions in place when staff raise concerns, that makes me wonder what other concerns have come up, been minimized, and treated as solved. And it also makes me wonder what other concerns are going to come up, be minimized, and treated as solved.
Got it. Well, luckily we have this public space to talk about those, and hopefully I've practiced the transparency that I've talked about ever since, frankly, my job interview. Maybe if folks didn't get a chance while Mr. Almusa was talking, our chief of operations did a little explainer for us on the issue on the third floor. So I don't think we're minimizing it by, escalating it to the person who's responsible for all of our buildings. But I think that has a lot of technical language that I'm not familiar with, but I hope some of the public find some comfort in that. And like we did in the walkthrough, and I think like I've always tried to practice, is offer transparency around these solutions, right? So that's what Cynthia Ruiz promised, one of our operations specialists who joins us. And we already got an answer from Chief Davis, and there'll be more transparency on that as well.
And I'd just like to state that I think my overall point has to do with the fact that transparency doesn't mean that a staff member blows the whistle during a walkthrough and then we address the problem. Transparency means something else. And I think we're conflating two different things when we say that was transparency.
Well, no, I'm saying more on this issue, more is coming. However, like the people that are actually in the HVAC business and giving us reports on the work that they've done, tell us that room is safe when it comes to filtration and air circulation. It's also true that there's a space heater providing heat and that there is no cooling, right? So that's just a reiteration of what we talked about earlier tonight.
Right. And so what that means is there's no fresh air being replenished and forced into the room via that central HVAC system. And that is a definite and serious safety concern. And I'm really going to stop talking now, but I'm just trying to make sure that what I'm saying isn't being misrepresented.
Right. Mr. Almusa, I can, it is actually not the same thing. It is a separate ventilation system from the from the airflow system. And with the memorandum of understanding that was signed, issue 34 states that the DCPS shall have HVAC systems ensuring they meet the standards for safe airflow in accordance with ASHRAE guidelines. Chief Davis provided us the ASHRAE certification for that airflow. In addition, we had to have the MER filters, which are installed, and we took the extra step of installing hospital grade HEPA filters. So in case one of the systems failed, we have a duplication. So it is uncomfortable, but as far as the memorandum of understanding and certainly the safety of the kids, which is our primary, and the staff, which is our primary concern, it meets the HVA system requirements. And again, Chief Davis explained this in a separate email that he sent to after the walkthrough that explained the difference between the air filtration system and the heating and cooling system.
Right. And I'm saying that those all, first of all, they are supposed to work in conjunction to provide air quality. So it's not just one or the other. It's supposed to all be working together. Second of all, I'm not saying that we violated any agreements. I'm just saying that that floor was less safe than the rest of the building. And we know that. And this is what it took in order for the issue to be actually addressed. And my broader point is that if this is what it takes for a legitimate and real safety concern to actually be addressed, then I'm very concerned going forward. And I also have no idea what other concerns haven't been addressed.
I think, Mr. Almusa, take a moment to read the what's in the chat there. That might make you feel better about what work was done and why DCPS stands by the readiness of that room. But regardless of the readiness of that room, we're not going to use it, or that floor, to make sure that everybody feels as comfortable as possible. That's why we're going up to the 4th floor.
And yes, we really appreciate that move. Thank you.
Thanks, Principal Berkowitz. I was going to highlight that. I think Mr. Almusa was talking. I did have an opportunity to read. If those who are listening to this conversation, if you can look in the chat, Mr. Berkowitz did provide, it looks like, language directly from a response that he received to explain what was going on the 3rd floor. But as we said, we're going to make the change and relocate those classrooms until whatever issue is resolved, just to address it for now. I see a few others. I don't want to push on, but I do want to push on a little bit. I think we have captured the significance of the concerns around that ventilation system, but we also have a plan in place to work around those 2 classrooms for now, while DGS figures out how to fix it. But there's some others just making comment that it was the same. And I want to stick to that so we can wrap it up. I think I see a question was DGS on the walkthrough. I think that's from Dr. Stover or are aware of the HVAC issue. So that was, I think, answered. Was there a DGS representative there, Mr. Berkowitz?
Lona said that it was a yes, DGS. Cynthia is not from DGS. She's DCPS, but she works closely with them. So no, there was not a GGS staff member. But Cynthia's one of our liaisons between them and General Services.
And I'm just scrolling through to make sure that was it. Is it related to that? Mr. Miller. So Mr. Miller made a comment. I'm going back up because there's a lot. Here's Mr. Miller's concern is around WTU rep not being present, respecting teachers who are concerned, but there were over 20 teachers and faculty who attended the tour today virtually. I guess the question is more so, does virtual attendance count? I'm just trying to sum it up without reading it verbatim because it is in the chat. We're given 24-hour notice.
No, virtual attendance does not count. It does not. I know Ms. Miller asked the question. I was not able to attend. I did try to find a replacement, but due to the time and not giving enough notice, I was not able to find either a teacher. Also, seeing that we are teaching to about 2:45, so 3:15 is not an adequate amount of time to finish the instruction, also get to the building safely. Also reached out to WTU to see if they could have someone come in on my behalf. Unfortunately, again, they were not able to do it on today. So another walkthrough does need to happen. Yeah, so hopefully it'll happen very soon.
Yeah, I think it's important to be clear that that's not the position of the school or DCPS. So there's clearly a disagreement here. There was a WTU member from Peabody. There was a WTU member from Watkins. If that's the holdup of bringing kids back to school, that would be very disappointing.
I understand. I'm just looking at the MOA and it outlines clearly who are the 12 people that's supposed to be on the tour.
Yeah, they were invited.
Yeah, but the MOA doesn't say they must be there. The MOA states that they have to be given the opportunity and encouraged to participate in the walkthrough. I'm looking at the MOU right now.
With all due respect, it does say walkthrough teams shall include.
Yes, it says they shall include, right. And all will be notified of the walkthrough and encouraged to participate. That's action, that's item 9, to ensure, social protocols, no more than 12. And so it's our position that, but to that point, I think we are more than willing to do another walkthrough for anyone who has concerns for the WTU prior to Thursday, for sure.
Yeah, that's a good point. Anyone can come by tomorrow, just like we had a dozen or so WT on the 4th. What are my dates? We came back to school the 4th. The 5th and the 6th, I offered walkthroughs to all staff members, not just WTU. We did a sign up, not a sign up genius for that. We ended up having about 12 takers on the 6th of January, mostly WTU member. We also had some instructional aides from Peabody join us. It was joyful because kids were there. So yeah, tonight was the 3rd time that we kind of took out our checklist and showed off our building and our readiness. But happy to host anybody tomorrow who would like to come. I will stop what I'm doing to prove to everybody that our building is ready, that we've met the checklist. We've had kids in it for 2 months. We've had staff in it for 2 months. And I want the other 120 kids to show up on Thursday.
On that note, I think I'm going to move us along because while that walkthrough was critically important to making sure our building is ready to reopen and receive students, there are a lot of other term 3 concerns that have come through email over the last 72 hours or so. So I don't know, Principal Berkowitz, you tell me how you want to do it. I know I sent quite a few to you via email.
Yeah.
Right. So
let's look at all term 3, like planning holistically, and I'll frame it out and see whatever I don't address, you can name for me. Let's start here that this is terrible, right? Like this, I'm not talking about walk-ins. I'm talking about learning in the world, in the United States right now, is not what anybody wants. It's not close to what's best for kids. And it's important that we acknowledge that, right? And we're trying to make the best of a situation that's not great for anybody. I think kids have lost out. I think parents have lost out. I know teachers have lost out on their relationships with their kids, despite the many miracles that happen every day, given the like high levels of connections that we see in our virtual classrooms. So with that being said, like going forth on this journey with the direction of DCPS, or the charge of our reopening committee, community core, was to meet our community demand with a model that first and foremost prioritizes our students furthest from opportunity. So that's been our charge. That's been the charge I've embraced. I think schools have been open, should have been open for a long time. And I'm proud of what DCPS and our Watkins team has done, and our Peabody team, because they're working over there too, to get our building ready. And I hope that everyone agrees that I've communicated every step of the way as clearly and thoroughly and transparently as possible. And given the timing of this discussion, I think I'm assuming like this work has been real for me in a really long time. And it's maybe more real for parents in the last couple of weeks, right? As we started calling people, as real for teachers too, because that day of opening school, which I think should have been Monday, is, as that approaches, feelings and anxiety goes up. So that's a big part of it. So let's talk about our approach. And I actually have something to share. Ramona asked me to share some data, which I'm happy to do. I'm not so fluent in Zoom because my life is Teams. Let me see here. Okay. So let me do some framing before I do this. I know how to do it now. So like our charge wasn't equality. Our charge was equity. And I think people have heard me say this, that equity is an overused term, and it does not share a common definition for everybody that uses it, right? So, but in what we're talking about, I think when DCPS is talking about equity, at least in reopening terms, is who are our students furthest from opportunity, who are our students least successful in our school, right? We're going to start with them to offer them seats and bring them back. And there is certainly a political, a racial, a social economic conversation in the city around whether or not our plans do what they're intended to do. So our plan was intended to do exactly that, make offers to family members of the students that might have an IEP, that might be experiencing homelessness, that might be an English language learner, that might otherwise just not be successful in school, that doesn't necessarily have one of those markers. And that's the process we followed. So the central office algorithm picked up the students with some of those markers. We collaborated at the school level to identify any of the students that weren't picked up in that filter, knowing what we know about our students' experience this year. And after those first priority students, we had a second round of appeals that we worked on. We put those through, and those students got the second call. The second round calls. The third round calls came to the siblings of those who had already accepted. And the fourth round came from the random number that every non-identified student was assigned in the DCPS like lottery algorithm system. So we executed on the plan, and I have no doubt that we prioritized our students furthest from opportunity. But I did have doubts on, did the impact fulfill the intent, right? And that's what I'm going to share with you now. Excuse me, staff. This came together just today, and I'm gonna gussy this up and share it with LSAT a little more professionally. This spreadsheet is not polished, but here's some data that we went into. Let me walk you through here. First, keep in mind that no one's going to actually attend in person for pre-K 4. This first row says all the IPL, that's in-person learning seats available. Right now, we're only at 5 for 5th grade. It's only at 11. So here's our seats that are filled. I shared that in the chat. So row 4, number of our priority students. This is based on what the numbers like DCPS and OSCE gave us. Like I said, experiencing homelessness, special ed, other at-risk factors. When we worked with our teams at school, we asked for who's not doing well this year. What data can we support that? We put some in progress year spreadsheets and academic data around these numbers. Our engagement trackers, our teachers are tracking engagement in the morning and the afternoon and noting if the student didn't show up, noting if the student was there but didn't participate, noting if students partially or fully participated. And in some cases, we have like 80 or 90 times that a student just did not engage with his or her teacher. So we put those people on the appeals list, right? 80 or 90, certainly. I think we brought our number down to 40 or 30, depending on the grade level, because we thought those students weren't accessing the live instruction. So this row here, row 6, says, these are students that filled by those high need students, so priority and appeals. This row here, number 6, all the other students that came in, right? So if we didn't get a preference, you didn't get an appeal, maybe you're a sibling or you got a random call, that row there is number 7, row 7. And then so the answer to the question is, to what extent do we fulfill our mission of not just offering and providing opportunity to the families furthest from it, but how did it work? How did it work out? And this data is probably imperfect, right? We are doing this by hand with our office staff and yeses and nos and on spreadsheets that we built. But we're able to come up with these numbers in green, right? And the fact that we got 12 out of 13 kids in our pre-K 3 class that are in need is fantastic, I think. In our 1st and 3rd and 5th grade classes, I think we did a pretty good job there too. Pre-K 4 kind of is off the table because they're not open, but 2nd and 4th grade, I really have question marks on why those numbers seem so different than the other grades. Like I said, this came together recently. I've been busy in the last few days and haven't had time to ask the 5 whys for this data analysis. But that is what it is. So my assessment when I look at these numbers is, in some cases we did really well, and in other cases we didn't do so well. And like I said earlier, I am certain that we executed the plan as designed, right? Now, did it have the impact? And I would say, according to this, 2nd grade, 4th grade, no, not really. I don't understand why those grade levels are so different, but that's something I want to look into.
Principal Berkowitz.
Yeah.
Once you saw the numbers of the IPL seats and the priority list, and those who, I think you said before, those who said they wanted to come and then those who actually would come. Was there ever a decision made to say, for instance, for 5th grade, that as it relates to equity and ensuring that all students have a fair chance, that once you saw how low those numbers were for what this was designed for, which I thought was the IPL students and the high priority, that it looks like the majority of the students wanted to stay at home? Was there ever a decision to say, hey, we're just going to keep 5th grade remote, or any of those other classes remote, so that the remote learning classes wouldn't be so big to service just a few students in person?
I did think about that. And I think the one there's a nuance here, Pam, that you said that I want to bring out. the system was designed, or the plan was designed to prioritize the high need students, right? But that doesn't mean ignore the other students. So we didn't ignore anybody, but does everyone have an equal chance of getting an offer? No. So I would not be okay with, I thought about it, and I talked a lot about it with a lot of folks. Like, would we stop offering if we got to a cohort? And like, maybe the answer would be if we got through like 60, 80% of the grade. We didn't get through that many. And I wouldn't want to deny an in-person opportunity when it could exist. And it does exist until all of these K-5 numbers show 22 and pre-K is at 16.
One
So
more
yes,
question that
I
I
did.
had.
But I
So,
think, well, yeah, let me just put a fine point on that. Like, but yes, I did. And I think it would be, this isn't an equal situation for every student. I do think it's as fair as it can be. I think stopping the offers would be very unfair.
so one more question, then I'll let you continue to explain. So after the meeting that that was had last week, I believe, when parents found out the actual number of remote learners that would be not in person, and would those numbers not have been affected? And so the parents who originally were like, no, I'm not sending my child, now see, as my daughter said to me, that the people going in person are now receiving a private school education, mommy. So now would they, after you call and say, hey, would you like a seat? Would that not sort of change the dynamic of that, considering that at first everyone wanted to be remote, and the people who we wanted to come in, you know, they decided not to. It was set aside for these people, and now they're not coming. The teachers didn't want to come, and now saying that, oh well, I might as well send my child into school because it's only going to be 9 people in class. Did that come, was that ever a thought, like, okay, now where's the equity in that part? Like, I know people chose not to take those seats when they were offered to them, and I understand and respect that, but at what point do we sort of look at it and say, okay, now the seesaw is sort of moving now, like the purpose of it is now gone, in my opinion. And maybe it's just mine, but you know.
Well, I would think that Pam, that this data, not at every grade level, but most of them, actually fulfills the purpose. We weren't going to get 100%, right? Like, not only are we're going up against so many societal forces here to put trust in schools, and that's difficult in any situation. And you layer on the pandemic and healthcare disparities and access to just, fairness. That's all in a parent's decision, right? But to your point of what are the virtual classes going to be like, some people might remember that we talked about that in our reopening core meeting. That's on our website. The virtual class sizes I projected in December, and they're coming through, right? We still have some in-person seats to fill, but we're going to hit what we expected. And could I maybe have done a little better job of communicating like that impact earlier? Perhaps, but everybody that was on that reopening community core, like, we had that conversation in December. And I think what I was saying earlier about, like, things don't become real until it becomes real, I think that is a pretty realistic application of that now.
If I may speak, I've had my hand raised for about 30 minutes, but every meeting I have my hand raised and I never get acknowledged. So today I have to speak out. I am a
sorry, Megan.
parent.
I don't do the hands. Go ahead, please.
And I'll apologize too, Megan, Ms. Riley. So just again, at the top of the meeting, I said that the structure of LSAT is that the team members typically talk. We have deviated from that today and a couple of other times when issues were pressing, but we reserve comments and questions from our community during the public comment time at the end. But you can go ahead and ask your question.
Thank you. As a single parent, I was offered spaces for 2 of my children, but my children attend different schools. So I physically cannot get to multiple schools and still maintain my job that I need in order to take care of our family. But it does not seem equitable because, as Ms. Dickerson said, the children who decide to go in person have 5 kids in one class, 6 in another for, well, 5 and 5 since one kid dropped out for 5th grade. Whereas if I have a 5th grader, now they have at least 36 kids in an online class. And that to me is taking away from an already challenging situation. We've switched class schedules repeatedly since the beginning of the school year. We start at 8:45, now we go to 9, now we're back at 8:45. Specials, now you go from 2:30 to 3 o'clock. So now their school day goes until 3:30 instead of 3 o'clock. There has been change after change after change that we're saying this is in the best interest of the kids, but it's not. And it is certainly not in the best interest of the families that this impacts. If I have a kid or children with special needs, but I can't physically get them in the school building, we are pushing their education even further behind because, in case in point, and this is nothing against my students, my kids' teachers, because I absolutely have the highest respect and adoration, and I have made that clear to them from the very beginning. If my child has at least an hour break from when the morning meeting is to when their small group is, they are not going to sit in front of the computer and actually do iReady or Sora or Epic for that hour. They are not. They are 9, 10, 5. The amount of responsibility that we are putting on a child, an elementary aged child, and the families is ridiculous, so that a handful of students that I do not believe at all are the highest at risk category. I do not believe that are coming back. I do not feel like this is the best situation, not for the teachers, not for the students at all. I feel like this is a political issue where the school you're boosting this up and trying so hard to make it sound great, but it is not a good situation, not for families that are impacted by increased class sizes, not for families who would potentially send their children back, but physically can't. That's what I have to say.
I agree. This isn't great. I agree. I said that earlier, and I wish we were talking about the ways that school is great, because that's what it's supposed to be. But I don't think it's great anywhere this school year, and that is tragic. And we're going to be picking up the pieces for that as a country for a long, long time. I think what we've tried to do, and the ways in which engage the community on this, is what we've done. And the data that I'm sharing tonight, like maybe validates it, maybe doesn't, depending on how you look at it. I think opening schools should be done, and we found a way to do it to maximize the students furthest from opportunity, and that was the intention. Fuzzy for some maybe on the impact, but that's, I think that's the best we could have done in the situation.
No, that's yours. So then why is so much focus being brought back on being in person, but there's not a focus on assisting the teachers who now have a much larger class size, assisting the teacher and the students with online education?
Well, I think that's, I mean, I don't know what you mean by focus exactly, but like if 80% of our class in 5th grade, or 86 in 1st and 3rd grade are our high need students, I would argue that we should divert our resources to our students that need it most. Now, are there high need students still at home? There are, I'm sure, but they did have an opportunity to come in. So our mandate is to still support all students in all of their needs. And I'm happy to work with a parent, whether their child's coming in or staying home, about if your needs aren't being met, let's work on that together. You, me, and your child's teacher, because this isn't easy. This isn't great for kids. Even the kids coming in, it's not a ideal situation with 11 kids in a room. You can't do partner reading. You can't do small group guided reading at the kidney table. It's not school for 11 kids. It's COVID school, and that looks very different. And there's drawbacks to it compared to a traditional school year. However, I'll go back to this. Like, I think we made the best that we could out of this situation.
So Principal Berkowitz and team, I want to jump back in because we are the agenda kind of went out the window a little bit, but there were so many issues I had to allow time for it. But you mentioned, and a parent mentioned, the reopening community core, and I was part of that team, and a few of us actually had a conversation around that third meeting. It was very important to our teachers, based on what they shared, that they would be able to remain departmentalized. But as I recalled, and as some other team members recalled, we had come up with a plan to allow for that departmentalization to stay in place while opening one class. And so if you could speak to how we got to 2 in-person teachers, because we had, and just for those who aren't familiar, because there are a lot of meetings and I know that everyone can't attend everything, but what that looked like was 2 teachers would remain departmentalized. One, teacher A would come in on Monday and Tuesday and teach math and science to that group of, and I'll just say 11 kids by looking at the class size in 1st through 5th grade. And then the partner teacher would be at home Monday and Tuesday and do reading and social studies with the students. And then Wednesday, everyone would remain virtual as we have now. And then on Thursday, they would flip-flop. Teacher B will go in and teacher A will be at home with the group of students that teacher B had Monday and Tuesday. How did we get to where we are now? I think that's a big question that came up because they even asked me, like, I thought we were doing 1 per grade level, and I couldn't answer that. So if you could share with everyone that will be very helpful.
Right. So we call that model C. The outcome of that model would be just 11 kids in person. And I remember as we were coming up with these plans, remember we had chances to like lift up other models that weren't suggested by DCPS. So model C works just like you described, Ramona. The teachers remain departmentalized. Our teachers today are remaining departmentalized. However, in the model that we're moving forward with, it's not just 1 group of 11, but 2. So again, going with the mandate to meet demand, that was one of the mandates of the reopening community core, as well as prioritizing our students furthest from opportunity.
But looking
having
at
2
your
classes
chart,
open does that.
Okay, looking at your chart, and maybe I'm not reading it correctly. If I look at line 6, I think that's telling me the number of in-person learning seats that were filled by high need. So prioritizing those students, right?
Yep.
I see where we would have some instances where 2 classrooms would be needed, particularly I see we exceed 11 at grades 1 and at grade 3. But at the other, in pre-K 3, we do exceed their numbers because they're at 8. There still could have been just a focus on those at greatest need before reaching out to everyone else. And I say that again from the email saying, parents also, we were planning for term 3 reopening, but then they learned on the call we had last Monday that decision is for the rest of the year. So there are some kids with high need who parent may not be comfortable today. Like, well, let's just say in January, we were asking them to make a decision in January for what they would be comfortable with in May. And it's not fair because there's a lot going on right now. The district's in the middle of, at the beginning, let me say that, of issuing vaccines to everyone. In a matter of weeks, parents may feel differently, but that seat the opportunity has been taken from them and they were not informed of it. So had they known saying no now meant saying no, not for term 3, but they've said no for terms 3 and 4. I think that is something that I would like for us to look at, because even the meetings that the mayor, the deputy mayor for education and chancellor held did not say reopening for the rest of the year. It said term 3, but we have
term 3, yeah.
appears to be the rest of the year.
Yeah, I think your question earlier is very close to Pam's question about, like, would you stop, right? So would I stop offering after we got the priority list and thought about it and just said, no, like, we're going to prioritize the kids first from opportunity, but like in-person schools, something everyone should have. So as far as term 3, this makes me think of something, past term 3. One, if we can go back to our list, like, let's say things look better and DCPS says it's term 4, this is what else we can do. I would love to see our numbers improve, like our health numbers across the city, and the DC health guidance changes the minimums on the class sizes. If it's safe to do that, we can offer 2, 3, 4 more kids in each class. That would be lovely. And if we're allowed to go back and revisit our priority list, even if you said no, I would certainly start there to make those offers. Right now, I don't know if that's in the cards. I'm hoping that it is. That would be the best enhancement to our current model without significant disruptions to how we're getting started in term 3.
I can speak to that a little bit. The goal is to see how we do in term 3. And the reason we can't add in kids as, like, let's say 3 or 4 weeks down the road from now is because one of the key factors is maintaining cohort integrity, right? And so we're trying to do that at places where it makes sense to do that. And so the book has not been closed on term 4. We want to make sure we have things right. We want to see what the health metrics are. We want to see if, as Principal Berkowitz suggested, maybe we find it is safer to have 13 kids in the classroom or 14. Maybe teachers, when they see the how things are going and they have the vaccinations, they feel more comfortable and they would rather come in person, and we can add a cohort that way. There are things that we have to look, but we just want to get started. And we had 2 priorities, as Principal Berkowitz said. The first priority was those students furthest from opportunity, could they be offered a seat? And the second priority was, can we meet demand of the community? And that is why we chose, and that's why I approved the number that I approved for Watkins, Peabody and Watkins, is because there is still the demand there. Now, if we didn't have the demand when we did the survey, and we could do it with 50 kids, that's who we would have done that. But we have a 2 charge. We want to try to provide everybody who wants an opportunity, and we can safely do so, that opportunity, and within that pool, prioritizing those kids who are struggling with virtual instruction. It's not a perfect system. If it was a perfect system, an easy system, we would do that thing. And we are all kind of exploring this great frontier. We don't know what it's like. And we're going to pay a lot of attention to how this is working. We're going to pay a lot of attention to our kids who are struggling. Is the in-person learning environment better than the virtual environment? And if we can't say yes to those questions, then we're going to reevaluate at the end of term 3 for sure.
I want to acknowledge some hands, and I'm apologize because I'm not used to managing so much. And there's some participants. I think I see Marisol Bayo with her hand up. I want to make sure I can acknowledge you at this time. Are you there, Marisol?
I am. My question was really related to a lot of the conversation that's already happening around the equity issues as it concerns high-risk students. And it looks like there's a lot of divergence in the grades, but particularly in those classes or those grades where it is clear that there is not a high proportion of high risk or high need students that are going back to school, back into the building that means that they then are staying home in much larger virtual classes. And so my question was really around, like, what are we doing about that?
Did you say that the high need students are not coming back to the building?
It looks like from the data that you were sharing that there's some differences in different grades
Yeah.
around
Second and fourth
the
grade.
number of
Right.
the kids that are going. So what are, I guess the question then is, clearly the children that are not going in and are high risk, high need, now are being put in much larger virtual classes, and then what's being done in that circumstance to deal with some of those issues.
I'm sorry, I missed you at the end there. Can you repeat that?
Yes, what essentially what is being done in the opposite is happening in several of your grades than what had been set out. So what's going to be done to address, to work with
The second and fourth
to
grade.
deal with that? Yeah.
Yeah, good question. So I mean, like I kind of shared earlier about how this data came to light, we're still processing it. Our teachers are transitioning to increased class sizes at the virtual space, and we've got check-ins with them planned tomorrow to do some tuning on our first 2 days and see what we can do. The next round of like enhancements that we're looking for is like, where can we squeeze human resources to be with our kids, right? Our teachers I think are working a full day, and they don't have much more time than what we've already done. So what other our homeroom teachers? So what other human resources can we have that can support our students with enrichment or other opportunities? There's been some great conversations at Peabody about that already. I think more than I've even been aware of, and I'm sure they're going on at Watkins as well. So we don't have the second tier plan just yet. We're working on making that first tier plan go well these first 2 days of the virtual learning in term 3.
Elise Phoenix.
Hi, thank you. Although I've had these conversations with Principal Berkowitz, I just would feel disappointed in myself, I think, if I didn't address this publicly, mostly reiterating what I've heard many parents say about equity. I think as a teacher going back in the school, if I were going back to teach 11 students who were really in need of teaching, I would feel differently. And if there were a mutual impact for those students who were going to be online, I would feel differently. However, I feel that since I'll be teaching 11 students and many of my coworkers who are staying virtually have classes of up to 40, whether or not they were quote unquote furthest from equity, many of my students this year were struggling, and they will continue to struggle in a class of 40. And I'm curious to know what decisions are going to be made in the future to address the discrepancies, to mitigate these differences that are going to be perpetuated by coming back in person. In addition, I also think in a time where there's a lot going on in the world and students are dealing with the stress of a pandemic, many political issues going on, we continue to change the schedule on them. We are changing their teacher. We've built community for the first 5 months or so of school, and we have changed that again. And I'm hearing that there's potential for another change come term 4. And I'm just wondering what really is going to be the benefit of all of this amidst so many changes and a class of 40 students who I'm just really curious how that's all going to play out. So thank you for letting me share my opinion in my piece. Thanks.
So I think you're talking about what are we going to do next year. I think there's some low-hanging fruit at Watkins that can be addressed with some budgeting, if that's an option, but certainly in our schedule. To my knowledge, there isn't a robust tiered system of interventions. People on this LSAT group have heard me talk about that, right? We have Ms. Kane, who offers the reading recovery intervention, and I think we would be remiss. It would be a real shame if we cannot offer more intervention opportunities for our students that we know are behind when we are back in the building. Everyone working now knows that your schedule is maxed out, and we are doing the best we can to visit with students more than once, right? Like our small group schedule isn't equal. It's based on need. And the frequency with which our teachers see our kids is not the same. It's based on what they think our students' needs are, right? So that's always been in place in schools, whether we're in a pandemic or not. So that's going to continue. Deanne's saying that she's not talking about next year, and I think my last answer to forgive me for blanking on the name, the question about like what other human resources can we use to support the students that are virtually. That's the next task in front of us to figure out.
We have a now LSAT member, Catherine. I think I see your hand is up as well, so I want to honor that.
Yeah, thank you, Ramona. I appreciate that. Principal Berkowitz, I'm glad to hear that you're going to be thinking more about what other human resources are there possibly to support the students that are remaining virtual, both in terms of when they're with their whole groups, but then also trying to preserve the small groups in terms of frequency or duration that they can meet, or the size of those small groups. As you think about it, I mean, two things that have crossed my mind is, are there options beyond teachers themselves, such as the aides or other staff that are already with the school that could provide some support? And then also, since we have IS Stover on, I know that this issue is not unique to the cluster. It's a challenge DCPS wide, and as you mentioned, we knew about it was going to be an issue when we were doing the reopening committee work back in December. So has there been any consideration at the DCPS level about how we can be providing more qualified personnel to support the students who are remaining virtual?
I think the last part was for Mr. Stover. The first part was for me. So yes, Catherine, we are looking at the aides. We have encouraged at every moment that aides can run groups, especially, the pre-K and K on their own. Like I believe aides should be teachers in training, not necessarily kind of bound by the roles and responsibility of their contract. I know my pre-K 3 student, my kindergarten student, they have small groups by their instructional aides all the time, and that increases our capacity very easily. So we're encouraging them to do it. We've not yet mandated it. There's some concerns around the language and contracts around that, and we're working through that. But that's one way. We've talked about our specials teachers. Everyone knows the special schedule. They don't have a full schedule, a full day's scheduling. A lot of them are going to be in the building providing relief to our teachers so that they can get breaks and planning time during the in-person day. But there are also gaps in their schedule. And once we settle into our in-person learning schedule, not to call him out, but like Mr. Lopez, Mr. Nagby, they may have some time in their in-person schedule to devote to a musical enrichment group during the ELA time. And that's again, stuff that we've talked about. We need to settle into our first couple of days, maybe weeks of in-person learning to shore up their availability.
Thank you for that. And before turning to see if IS Stover has any more to add, I just do want to note that, my kids have had some whole groups and small groups led by coaches or led by aides at various points throughout the school year. And it has been a positive experience. Obviously, I understand there's a lot of unknowns about how much time and capacity everyone has right now, but I'm glad that that's something that you're going to be exploring. And
Yeah.
Aya Stover, I was just wondering if you could speak to more.
Yeah,
like, at the
and so what we've
details
done,
level.
this is going to kind of sound counterintuitive, but we have put a lot of resources. We asked the schools, in order to make your plan succeed, what are the need, in person and virtual, what are the needs that you have? And so we are hiring a ton of extra staff. And some of those staff at some of the schools are actually freeing up other staff members to be able to go do small group instruction. We haven't hired all those staff, so we are actually hiring, I don't know the exact number, but hundreds of temporary workers to kind of help provide relief, so that we can free up teachers to who are virtual through whatever, either by the choice of the school or because of their health concerns, to then break up who are remaining virtually so they can have some more of those small groups.
Thank you. It would be interesting to know if there was an analysis similar to what Principal Berkowitz did for the cluster of showing what is the percentage or the number of high need students that are remaining virtual, where is that really high, as DCPS thinks about how to prioritize those additional resources. Thanks.
Yeah, I see a question in the chat about Wednesdays. I wonder what teachers would think about half day of small groups. I've been resisting that, but the community seems to be demanding more virtual time. What would teachers say to that?
There were, I know you're pondering, I don't know if you want your teachers to respond to that, or if that's just something you're wondering to question them, when you have some time with them. But it did come up quite a bit in emails that I received regarding like changes to, the students who are remaining virtual, and some ideas around how can we increase their time. So I figured that that's something you probably have to work out with your staff. Won't answer tonight on this call, but there were also some questions, and I'm trying to go back to them all. And I can only keep asking you all to bear with me because it's just myself and there are lots of hands up. I see another team member with a hand up, but I want to bring you back. Principal Berkowitz, there was a question around equity as it relates to the students that are in-person learning, and it had to do with racial demographics. And I know that's not something that I asked in advance, but it keeps coming back up in the chat. I don't know if you saw it. If you see it before me, you can respond to that particular, so I keep getting texts.
Yeah, no, good question. I have that. I have that in a space that I thought this was fascinating. So this is going to be too much to share, and it's not, like I said, it's not ready, but I'm going to pretty it up for you. So where is this? Let me get it. So okay, Watkins and Peabody have 669 students enrolled. 293 of them are white, 329 are black. That's almost everybody, but it's not everybody. The other racial identifiers are kind of like too small of an N, so we didn't pull those out. So yeah, we should have separated this by grade level, because Peabody and Watkins demographics don't look the same. Hold on, give me a chance. Anybody have a question for Mr. Fraser while I look at this data?
And it has, and I'm looking at the time, I'm like, okay, so how about this? How about, I'm gonna take some time and go through the chat to kind of see if I can put questions that have been unaddressed in buckets. I'll ask if any of my LSAT members that are on can do the same, just make sure we hit the big buckets, because clearly we're not gonna make it through everything tonight, but if we can just switch for a second. Principal Fraser has been on with us. Can you share some information about your upcoming opening and all the things going on there at Stuart Hobson? We can take a quick break.
Sure. So thank you guys for having us tonight. And I'm excited to share about our program. We're obviously in a much different spot. Time-wise, this is like the night before a big game for us. So we've all got the jitters. Tomorrow's our first go day. We're expecting about, I think if we add those numbers up, just shy of 50 to 60 students to show up across grades 6, 7, and 8. What the plan that we've put in place, we did not have kind of the algorithm from central office at the secondary level. So secondary schools were left to kind of define high need relative to their school and relative to the program that they were offering. So what we did at Stuart Hobson was we took students who were already eligible for our Title I targeted assistance support, which was already a filter with recent academic and just engagement indicators that we ran at the beginning of the year. So we had about 204 students who were eligible for Title I. So students who tended to be in the bottom 40th percent in performance for any number of metrics. So whether it was recent PARCC scores, reading inventory scores, ANET and iReady math scores and things like that. So using those indicators and weighting them, we came up with students who were struggling the most by that definition and have been offering them tutoring since late in the fall. So we started with that list. And then what we did for our reopening plan was we looked at students from that list who also had the most failures in the core 4 courses. So math, science, social studies, and English at the end of the first term and at the progress report mark during the second term, because that's where we were when we were starting to make our offers. So that gave us another screen to add. And then we, in reverse priority, from most high priority to least, we've started to make calls. So our program will be offering, at least to start, 11 an AM session and a PM session. So 11 sixth graders in the morning, 11 sixth graders in the afternoon. So we're targeting like 22 of our high priority sixth graders, 22 high priority seventh graders, roughly speaking, and 22 high priority eighth graders. We're getting a lot more interest from our sixth and seventh grade families for whatever reason, but we're getting close to filling up. Honestly, most of the reason that we're not at 22 seats filled in all 3 grade levels right now is almost exclusively because we're still waiting on some immunization records from some families. So we've got we're almost full if you just went by verbal commitment, but we just don't have all the students quite yet ready to come in because they haven't finished getting their shots or documenting or sharing that documentation with the school. So optimistic that next week on the 10th, when we have our second Wednesday program, we will have we'll be full. And once we get there, we're actually going to reconvene our RCC later this month, I believe, towards the end of the month, to check in with how the program's going and to explore whether or not we need to expand it. We may have more staff interested in coming in at that point. So we're going to kind of do this in phases, but we hope to be full for phase 1 as early as next week, and then we'll have a couple weeks to practice it and get our rhythms down, and then we'll start talking about growing the program out. Obviously, for us, we are not offering anything Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, or Friday. So we're really holding this program up as an enhancement of what we were already doing well virtually. We hope that the students that are coming in, we really are optimistic that this touch point with the school and with adults will help them to get some more small academic wins, and we're hoping that those things snowball. We're hoping that the attention in small groups from staff members helps. And we also restructured our office hours for all students. One of the things that families have been asking us for since the beginning of the year is just for a little more structure and predictability on Wednesdays, which has largely been an asynchronous find help where you can get it approach, while we've also had a lot of teacher meetings. So all of our teachers, whether they are virtual, all of our teachers who are all virtual will be offering office hours from 10 o'clock to 11:30, and then again from 2 o'clock to 3:30. And those two 90-minute windows align with times during the in-person day when the teachers who are in person will be directing students to set a goal in terms of like getting work done or getting help, and then going online and getting that help. So, if a student says, I want to get help with my essay for 7th grade English class, their 7th grade English teacher is going to be available right then and there for academic support. So that's just, we're trying to be really planning for opportunities for kids to set a goal and in a very short period of time get support and hopefully achieve that goal before they leave the building at the end of the AM session or the PM session. So we're hoping to start snowballing those wins with the kids who are with us. So it's going to be, it's going to seem pretty small and I think uncomplicated compared to what a lot of the elementary schools have been rolling out. And I think that's just a pattern across differences between elementary and middle school. So we're really excited. Our 6 teachers who are coming in all opted in and volunteered to do it. So I think just like the spirit and energy around our program is really positive. Everybody has first day jitters, and health and safety concerns are very legitimate and real for us too. So we've been working really hard to just be really clear about the state of our building and our readiness. Our walkthrough was last Monday, and went, I think, successfully. There are a couple little things that we were still working on, work orders that are open, but nothing major or cataclysmic, I don't think, in anybody's estimation. So yeah, I think that's our program. I'm happy to field some questions if I need to buy the Watkins team a little more time. But yeah, any questions people have? I feel like I've done a lot of these info sessions, so I probably left something really important out.
I see a few hands up, but they're the same hands that's been up for a while. So as Principal Frazier just said, is there anyone here that has any questions about the Stewart-Hobson reopening? I think I saw one in the chat earlier just asking like what was his plan, and he just did a very good job of sharing what that looks like. We'll start tomorrow.
I guess, yeah, one other thing I'd add, and seeing Lona in the chat reminded me of it. I think like one thing our RCC was talking about, and this will be part of our CSP conversation if we have time for that tonight. We've noticed in data, and this I think was predictable, but like it's been the hardest for our 6th graders to build culture and community. And we also know that culture and community are the groundwork for academic success. So because all the 6th graders were new to us, they don't know any of the teachers. That's what they've struggled to, to get to know each other, to get to know us as educators. So where usually at this point in the year, they'd feel really comfortable and they'd be being silly with us and stuff. I think it's been a longer road, and that's bearing out a little bit in some of their academic performance. So one of the things that we're hoping is that as the weather warms up, we might also be able to integrate some like meet and greets or meetups on the field, or even in the gym that are really just opportunities to socialize safely. Or to see teachers in person that our 6th graders have honestly only ever seen, through Microsoft Teams. So that's kind of phase 2, 2.5 or 3, but we're hoping that we can get there. And that's something that we've heard loud and clear. That was actually in the survey data too for us, was just the opportunity to build culture and community with people. That was almost as high a priority as a little bit of academic support, for middle school at least.
Principal Frazier, it's Denise Sport. I have a 7th grader with you.
Yep.
I'm curious, did you have more teachers willing to come in, or was 6 the max? And, is there a way where I think I read at some point you are looking to add more classes or groups in the next term? And is that still the plan?
Yeah. I mean, it might even be before the next term. We got about, I think it was 6 total, which I think is in line with what the city saw the average. I think the average was around 10% of teachers who opted in. So that puts us right in that ballpark. And I'm honestly hoping that, as word gets out that our program is going really well, more people will opt into that. But yeah, I mean, my goal would be, if not term 4, a little bit before that. And I think if I didn't put that in writing, I think you were on one of our town halls or something where we talked about that with families. So that's probably where that came up. But I don't have the numbers in front of me, but especially with the 8th grade, like I think our acceptance rate has kind of tracked with what we saw in the survey. So I think roughly 1 in 3 families. So it takes us 3 families to get a seat commitment. So we're actually moving towards, getting through that. We'll get to that 204 students total who are Title I eligible pretty quickly, and maybe even just to fill up these 22 seats. And I think what we're really curious to see just knowing how things have gone in other schools that have opened already and in the elementary schools, we're not assuming that a seat commitment and handing in paperwork means someone's actually going to show up, because we know that attendance is something that we're going to have to monitor after that. So we'll see tomorrow and next week if our full 6th grade program actually means 11 students showing up regularly in the morning or the afternoon.
Thank you.
Yep.
So our time is now 7:45, and I'm going to apologize to our team once again. I'm going to apologize on that because we do have some very important budget discussions and stuff to talk about. I know that our principals don't have budgets yet, but we kind of. I have 2 remaining hands up. I want to honor those 2. They've been waiting a long time, and then I'd like to, I guess, just go with public comment. I'll share what I summarized after those 2. If we can, how about I summarize first in case your questions lie in this. And looking at the questions that went unanswered, all of them kind of, the bucket is around virtual learning. And I know we talked a bit about that, but there seems to be significant concern with the students who decided to remain virtual, seeming to not be receiving an equitable educational program online. So I know there's no quick answer for that, but I think that's where we need to focus and maybe come back to the community in the coming weeks and how that's changing, as well as we touched upon considerations for 4th term. And I know that's weeks out, but just looking at how we can service more students as the year progresses. I know that you mentioned too around, I think this was IS Stover, so the comment was around increasing the number of students in the classroom. Well, those are CDC guidelines, and I think that they went in and measured to make sure that the seats were so many feet apart and so many that. So it would be more than just numbers going down. It would be the CDC changing their recommendations for what a safe classroom would look like. Another asks about what happens when an in-person learning teacher is sick with COVID. Will a substitute come in? And how does that work with limiting exposure? I think I might have asked Berkowitz this before and got an answer, so I don't know if that wasn't public or maybe it was on that call. I think it might have been on a call that we had, but I'd like to just honor that. Maybe we need to put together an FAQ, Berkowitz, and put on our school's webpage. Maybe we can post it to PTA and LSAT because some of these questions keep coming up. And there might be parents that have the same question, and we can refer them to those FAQs as it relates to where we are now, because that might come up again. And I know I've heard the answer before, but we want to make sure that parents feel comfortable sending their kids in or preparing to send them in, because we're all coming back soon one day. And then that was it. There were lots of suggestions on how to increase the time. So I'll let you, sort through that, like decreasing morning meeting time. And of course, we talked about the Wednesday small group. So I have Carrie Levine, I hope I said that right. And then I have a D Edwards.
Yep, that's right. Thank you very much. And I wanted to thank Principal Berkowitz and Mr. Stover and all the teachers for being here tonight to talk this through and answer questions, because I know this has been a difficult and charged discussion for everybody. I'm a 4th grade parent, and especially in light of the numbers that Principal Berkowitz just put up and shared with us, which are startling, I think, in 4th grade. I really do, and I understand that there's been a big bucket of questions around equity and the virtual classrooms. And so without reiterating it, we do now find ourselves in a situation where maybe 20% of the kids are going to be receiving 50% of the teaching resources in 4th grade, especially, and very few of those are high needs kids. So I appreciate that you're going to be looking for ways to add some staffing in the virtual classroom around the edges. But I am wondering if we're going to be seeing how this goes in term 3, and if you're open to just really rethinking this, frankly, if it goes poorly for a majority of the students. because this does seem as though it didn't go the way people expected it to go. And I'm wondering what the schools or DCPS's willingness is to rethink this if frankly, if it's disastrous for a lot of children.
Yeah, I'm only going to do what's good for kids. So I'm always thinking about the impact, right? Like that's why we ran these numbers and looked at them, and like I have more questions, right? So we have to be careful in before we change course quickly, because changing course means a lot for families, and you've already had enough change. But to your point, like, am I going to be rethinking it? Absolutely. Like, I'm not a leader that thinks just because I have a plan that's it, right? I want to look at the impact and look at the data and revisit that, and I won't do that by myself. And like to that point, like I wouldn't open the school if I didn't think it was safe, right? I thought our walkthrough was a success in November. There weren't concerns brought to me. We've had kids in the building for 2 months. We've had staff in the building for 2 months, following all the health and safety precautions. So I'm in there too, and I want it to be safe for me and every single person, adults and child. So I'm only going to open the building when I think it's safe, and that's what I think we've demonstrated a few times now. So, but for term 3 in our virtual space, yes, to answer your question directly, we'll be rethinking it. We'll be considering changes to it to make it work for our students, for sure.
And absolutely, why we shifted to the RCC process in the first place is, originally we were starting this, and the goal was to have one classroom, a one size fits all for elementary schools, really, which was one grade level per school that had one classroom. And that just didn't work for a number of reasons. For instance, I support Lafayette. We would have had less than, it would have been a laughable number of kids as a percentage that we would have had. And then we would have had Ross. We would pretty much had the whole school. And so we brought this closer. And so the tenet that we have been working with is that we want to do what works in the communities, and the teachers and the staff who are closest to this, who are doing the work, know what works best. And so therefore, if this is not working, if our bets that we made, and they were educated and they were born from our experience, don't pan out, then absolutely we're going to change. These are our kids. We've already lost so much. We can't lose any more. And so unequivocally, clearly, if this isn't working and we have metrics to show that it's not working, we're going to stop doing it.
Can you clarify when you say this? Only because I want to make sure.
So the system that we've designed, right? Or the schools have designed. If for instance, we find that the engagement metrics for the students in the class aren't what we were, we see a big degradation of those numbers that we're already tracking, then we're going to look at that and see, well, do we have to do that? How can we stop this? We'll look at the individual kids and say, what can we do? We're not going to, just because we have a system that we designed to try to solve an uncertain and very complex problem, doesn't mean we're in there for perpetuity. We are explorers together in this world, and we're going to do what is best for our kids, and what's safest, and what's emotionally safe, and what's academically the best for them. We believe that what we're doing is in balance the best for all the kids, but we've never done this, so we don't know.
Thank you for answering my question, both of you, and thank you for saying that you're open to revisiting this. I appreciate what a challenging situation this is. I appreciate there's no solution that's going to make everyone happy here or close to it. But it is concerning that such a significant portion of the instructional resources are being devoted to so few kids, and so few kids with high needs in some of these grades. And so I hope that beyond nibbling around the edges, I hope that you'll consider that, because I do think that these kids have been through a lot and lost a lot of instructional time over the past year. And so I appreciate that you're looking at that.
And that was, thank you for that, Miss Levine. That was my this. What did you mean by this? It seemed that I took it as in-person learning when so many parents on here have kids that'll be virtual. So knowing what you said,
this was both. This was both the virtual and the in-person. So I didn't have a proper antecedent to my to my pronoun. So I apologize. Yes.
So because right now, what I can summarize from the questions in the chat is that this part, like this for a lot of parents, is this isn't working when it comes to virtual. So they're looking for this meeting to end with the people in charge to go back and figure out something different, some way of better supporting those students that are going to remain virtual, and ways that we can increase in engagement for those to have an opportunity to come in, even if it's, you know, as the weather changes, as the metrics change, as the teachers are vaccinated, whatever that looks like, that this doesn't just focus on the students that are coming in the building each day.
We're responsible for all 660
all the kids. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
So I don't know if it's Miss or Mr., but Edwards, if we can get your question, and then I think I'm gonna have to wrap up because we're right at the 8 o'clock hour. If you have your hand up, I see 2 more hands. If you can send me a direct message or an email to the LSAT email address, I will once again capture those questions and send to Principal Berkowitz if we don't have time to get to it. So Edwards, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for inviting us all to this meeting. I did have a few comments that I wanted to be heard and have addressed. I have a 4th grader at Watkins. And so as I've been listening, thank you for allowing us to speak, for me to speak, and I'm going to be patient in saying what I needed to say. I've heard a lot of speaking today about what we did and what's happened in the past. One of the things that I want to say is that I heard talk of more qualified persons helping the students. What is necessary for students, and my child is remaining virtual, is to ensure that she has the assistance with a licensed teacher who she's already had. I want to make sure that we're addressing the social emotional impact that this change is having upon our students. These are young children, and we expected to have teachers for the remainder of the year. Now we've lost a teacher who is Mr. El Musa, who we were very much connected to gain another teacher who I know is probably highly qualified. However, this has an impact on children. We have children being regrouped. And I want to make sure that we understand that small grouping and having other people work with children is fine, but if they're not licensed teachers, that's not teaching. What I need to know is, where is the data that supports having such a large number of students working with a teacher is equitable, not only equitable, but where's the efficacy in that? I think our students are not going to be successful if we have so many people with the teachers. That's more work for them. That's less of them sharing. That's more of them trying to be patient online when they've already done that. There's little discussion on how we're going to correct and improve what's already happening. We must do what's right for students, and right now we're not doing what's right for students. I feel like we're being penalized for choosing to keep our children at home where they're safe. And that's a choice that I've made for my child. I need to know the plan that we're going to have to correct this and to not be proverbially brushed underneath the rug, because that's the way I feel it's being put on those children who are able to attend school in person. Thank you.
I'm not sure if that's if there was a direct question there, but I think like the person's comment earlier about, revisiting it, we will be every day. Every educator asks themselves, what can I do better? And that works in the classroom, that works at the leadership level, and that works systematically, right? So that's how I'm thinking about it. And listening to parents tonight at LSAT and listening to parents on my email and teachers as well is all going to be part of the decision to make our plan more robust or change course. depending on the data that we have.
Brush your teeth and do not call back online to Malachi or whoever else.
So I think I said that was going to be the last question, but there's one that just popped up in the chat from Principal Berkowitz. Maybe we can just end it with talking about, with answering it, because it says, will there be a meeting scheduled soon to address supports for the students who are remaining virtual?
Yeah, I think one of the easy, I mean, potentially easy things to do is, I'm going to throw it back to that like Wednesday morning, half day Wednesday stuff. Like, what would teachers' reactions be to that? Like Wednesday is an opportunity for sure.
This is Miss Sullivan. I don't know how many teachers are still on the call. Many of us are already running small groups on Wednesdays, and with speaking for my own experience, with the significant increase in my virtual class size from 25 to 39, I think it will be in the morning, and from 22 to 36, possibly now 37 in the afternoon. I already am going to have to do small groups on Wednesday. So, and I don't mean that in a negative way. I'm excited to spend more time with my students on Wednesday. What I mean by that is that is already a necessity based on the virtual class size that we now have.
Okay.
So that's not an option for addressing the equity issues that have been raised tonight.
Okay. So you're saying it's a necessity. Got it.
It's already has to happen for us to be able to meet the minimum needs of our students at the class sizes that we now have.
Okay. Thank you for
I'm
sharing.
glad that
Ramona, can I?
Oh, I hear someone.
It's me, it's McPherson. Caitlin's hand is up because she had posted a question in the chat a long time ago that didn't get addressed. So I don't know, I don't want to mess up the time even more, but I wanted to point that out. That's why she raised her hand.
Thank you, McPherson. You're part of my
Sure
team.
thing.
I've been trying to manage it on my own. So for those who have to go, I know it's 8:01 and some are, you've got families. I respect that. But if you can hang on for another moment, I'd like to let Caitlin ask her question. So Caitlin.
Hi, thank you. This is Miss Hendricks. I am one of the kindergarten teachers and one of the kindergarten teachers returning. And this is my first LSAT, so I apologize if this was discussed in the previous meetings about the Peabody facility. But I've just been concerned about the materials that came from Peabody for our pre-K and kinder teachers to use in our walk-ins classroom, because we were required to sign waivers releasing responsibility from the District of Columbia for risks associated with exposure to mold, asbestos, and other environmental conditions that could cause illness or death. And it's not my personal property, it's the materials I'm expected to prepare my in-person classroom with. I'm not an expert on mold or asbestos, so I'm just wondering how I'm able to ensure that these are safe for my students. Is there an expert that's going to come in, or how will I be able to ensure that I can take on that personal risk, but I'm not putting others at risk by getting my materials from Peabody to use in the classroom?
Yeah, just like the comment I made last time about not doing something with kids or staff that's not safe, this is the principle that applies in this case. So I think in the language that we've shared with staff, the Peabody folks, is that all of the, let me see this, all the folks that were working to clean up Peabody and pack up stuff so that we could use the materials over here in walk-ins, the things that were not, that were salvageable, right? Plenty wasn't. But I believe in part of that process and our partnerships with DGS was an environmental specialist that checked on those materials to make sure that they were safe to give back to people. Now, Ms. Hendricks and I have talked about this, like the logic would, and I shared this then, like the logic would suggest, like, why would you need a waiver? And I think that why were you asked to sign a waiver before claiming your things? This is not my area of expertise. but I do remember that the offices involved in cleaning up Peabody and salvaging what we could included DGS, but it also included the Office of Risk and Management, right? And I imagine that that's where the waiver came from. So I think we also said, did I share this with you? I definitely was talking about it with Mr. Montgomery. Anything you don't want to use, you don't have to use, and we'll get other things. So that's that. I don't think you've had any concerns in your classroom, Ms. Henrik. I think it was another teacher with one box of something. I heard that was removed. But anything that you don't want to use, you don't need to use. And we'll find other resources. Now the timing of this is tricky. It only came to light a couple of days ago, so we can't find these things right away, but we will do our best. I'm confident in what was taken out. Like I'm gonna move forward with the assurances that I've gotten from DCPS and the DC government. Like I said, I wouldn't do that if I didn't feel comfortable putting people in those situations, just like opening our building. So I'm ready to go with it. But if any teachers aren't, we'll pack it back up and find a replacement.
And our PTA president, Lona, she just posted, it went away, someone tapped, information about another meeting. So they've been having sit meetings regarding Peabody, and the repair and restoration will be on February 17th. That's the next meeting. So stay tuned for PTA emails. I've been following those too.
It's actually our first meeting, so no one's missed anything.
Oh, the last one was them coming to your PTA meeting and giving them. Right. Okay. Yep. First meeting. Okay. All right. Thanks, Lona, for that. And again, I just want to thank everyone. Tonight was really challenging. And I want to thank everyone for being here, for those who spoke, those who typed messages, and for our Principal Berkowitz and Dr. Stover for being here to respond. We are in this together, as we said. It's challenging for us all. We just want to know that, we're being heard, that all of our children, virtual and in person, matter, and that we're going to figure this out together. I will be sending out minutes from tonight's meetings, and there's a recording for anyone who was unable to make it. I know there was a mishap with the link at the beginning, and again, apologies for that, but if anyone's interested, have them send an email to the LSAT email address, and we'll make sure that they get a copy of this meeting. If you had a question that you weren't able to answer, or you would like a response to later, send it to me as well. I'm going to work with our principal to get an FAQ out, just so that all of our questions are answered, and try to be more transparent with everyone. With that being said, I bid everyone a good night. Stay warm, stay safe, and see you next month.
Thank you, Stuart.
Thank you. Good evening.